Okay, today we're going to do Daf Medalad Amid Aleph. We're in the middle of speaking about burning Talmudic things which are also to eat. Question is, can you have benefit from the fire? What is the problem? The problem will be maybe you might, in the process of burning it, you might come to have benefit by mistake from the thing that you're eating. So discussion was about burning wheat kernels, which are tamei. Can you burn them in a fire or not? So we said, as machlekes, there's one opinion says you could burn them, one opinion says you can't burn them. Says the Gemara, the opinion says you're allowed to burn them. Maybe you might come to eat the wheat kernels. Says the Gemara, could the Ravashi go according to Ravashi? Yeah, this is at the top of Lamadal. Says the Gemara that Ravashi b'shtikasa u'misasa. Ravashi said the way they would burn them would be that before burning them, they would cook them, and they would cook the wheat seeds. Wheat seeds aren't the disgusting when you cook them, and since they would cook and they would become disgusting, and then after they become disgusting, unedible, then they would burn them. So there's no chash that you're going to come to eat the seeds. So too, the way that which Rabbi Yochanan said, which you know yesterday, that about wheat seeds, they're able to burn them after they become tamei and have benefit from the fire. So you're in the case that you burn them, you cook them before you burn them, and therefore they're not edible anyway anymore, so you won't come to eat them. Where did Ravashi say? Where do we see that Ravashi says that after you cook the seeds and they become unedible, then you're able to burn them? He said it regarding to the statement of Rav Avin in the name of Rav Yitzchak that Abashol Gabol shall base Rabbi Hoya. Abashol would need the dough in Rabbi's house. Abashol was the cook in Rabbi's house, and he would need the dough. And in order to need the dough, you need hot water. And they would. How would they heat up the hot water? They would heat up the hot water with a fire that was made with wheat of truma. So we see that he had benefit from a fire that was burning Talmudic truma. The question is, why was it mutter to use a fire that was burning truma? Maybe, how can you burn wheat kernels and have benefit from the fire? Maybe in the process of heating up your water with this fire, you might come to take out a kernel and eat it. So Ravashi answered, speaking in Rabbi's house, they would first, if they had wheat kernels that had to be burned because they were tamei and they were truma, so they had to, they would cook them first to make them unedible, and then they would burn them, and that's why it was mutter to burn them. Okay, now the Gemara goes into a new sugya. Says the Gemara, Amar Avin Chananya Avin Tanu Trumas Beirab. Ravin and Ravin learned a lot of things regarding the din of trumas. So they learned by Rabbi, and the Rabbi taught a lot of din about truma. Once upon a time they were walking Rabbi, and they met Rabbi Bar Masna. So Amar Lahu, so Rabbi Masna told them, what did you learn about trumas in the Beis HaMedrash? Yeah, Rabbi taught a lot about trumas. So Rabbi was like the expert on, let's say, on trumas. And they met Rabbi Bar Masna, and Rabbi Masna answered him, say a Pesachim on trumas, say a Pesachim on what you're learning. So Amar Lei, so Abai Bar Ravin and Hanina Bar Ravin answered him, Umay Kashulach. Well, what's your question? In other words, what do you want us to say about truma? Amar Lahu, so he answered them back, I have a question like this. In other words, they basically told him to ask a question, we'll answer it. Amar, they told him like this. Now, I have a question. What's my question? It says in the Mishnah, Shili Trumas Shanitmu. If you have a cabbage, or you have lettuce, you have lettuce or things that grow usually with a cork in the middle, and they became tamei. And after they became tamei, you replanted them inside the ground, and you put them back inside the ground. So the question is, does the new cabbage that grows from the Talmudic cabbage, is the new cabbage tamei or tar? So the Mishnah says tamei, they are tar. In other words, once you put this Talmudic cabbage in the ground and you plant it, it's not food anymore. And since it's not food, it becomes tar, and therefore anything that grows from it is tar. But the Mishnah continues. The Mishnah says, but you still, even though it's not tar, But asurim melacha, you can't eat it. Why can't you eat it? Because it's still truma. So for one hand, we say that if you plant the cabbage in the ground, it loses the status of tar, that before was tamei, now it's tar. On the other hand, we're saying that it still stays trumas. The question is, his question, why if it's if you put it in the ground, it's now tar to eat. Meaning before it was tamei, and now since you're planting it, it loses the status of tuma and it becomes tar. Why does it still stay truma? If its status of tamei should change, the status of truma should also change. And if the status of tamei doesn't change, then the status of truma should also not change. How can you say that regarding tuma, that if something was tamei and you planted it in the ground, now it becomes tar? Regarding truma, if something was truma and you planted it in the ground, the things that grow from it are still truma. Why? So that's what Rabbi Masechta asked Abaya and Avchanina. So Amuneh, they answered him, this is what we learned in the Masechta. Remember, they came from the Masechta of Rabbi, and Rabbi learns, told a lot of dinim of Truma. So he says, this is what we learned this is what Rabbi would have answered. This is what Rabbi told us. My asurin, that which it says in Mishnah, that it's also to eat, this cabbage that was planted in the ground again, is asurin lezorim. It's asurim lezarim. Doesn't mean it's also to eat regularly. It means it's also for a kohen to eat. It doesn't mean it's also for everyone to eat. It's also for a kohen to eat. Even though it's, in other words, even though putting them in the ground, it's mevatel, it changes its status regarding, tuma, but regarding tuma, so that regarding tuma changes status. But regarding food, at the end of the day, it's still. It comes from a truma tree. It comes from a trumatic cabbage. Since it comes from a trumatic cabbage, even though it's tar now because it lost the status of food, but it's still at the end of the day, you can't say that it lost its connection to truma. Since it still has a connection to truma, a kohen is able to eat. If it was still tamei, then everyone is asked to eat it. But now that it's truma, and now that it's tar, a kohen is also to eat this cabbage. So that's what they answered Rabbi Masechta. So Rabbi Masechta asked, and their answer, how can you say that? You're telling me that that's what the Mishnah is teaching us? That's also if you plant a cabbage, if you plant a cabbage in the ground, the things that will grow from this cabbage are also. I need the Mishnah to tell me that. We already have what's the Mishnah telling us? If it's to teach us like Gidulu Truma, if it's to teach us that things that grow from Truma stay truma, so they have a cabbage and you plant it in the ground and another cabbage grows from it, then a cabbage bush grows from it, then that cabbage bush will stay truma. But I already have a Mishnah for that. I don't need this Mishnah to tell me that, because it says in the Mishnah, it's Mishnah in Trumas, gidule truma, whatever grows from truma is truma. If you're going to tell me that we're here speaking about, we're not speaking about things that grow directly from a cabbage, just speaking about the cabbage made something, and that thing made something else grow. It's called gidula. It doesn't grow directly from the cabbage. First, the cabbage plants a bush, and then the bush makes new cabbages. So it's it's not directly coming from this cabbage. See if you can tell me that the Mishnah is mechanish, even that's usher. That also I don't need to tell us. So my kamashma, what's it teaching us? Bedavar shan ein zare kala anami tanina. Already learned taha tevel. If you have tevel, gidulav mutarim, the things that grow from tevel, it's mutar. The davar shazare kala, if the thing that grows, that when the certain plants you grow in the inside, you grow in the ground, the way they grow is that the seed disintegrates before it grows. There's other things, other type of plants that the seed doesn't disintegrate. So if the seed disintegrates, says the Mishnah, so then it's mutar. Why? Because the bush that grew now has no connection to the seed from before, even though the seed before was truma, but now the seed disintegrates. So, but the seed disintegrates and it's a new bush. But if the seed doesn't disintegrate, I feel like the Mishnah says even no matter how far you're going to go, you're going to have a cabbage tree, and the cabbage tree is going to grow more cabbages, and you can take this cabbage and you can plant another cabbage tree. So however many cabbage trees you're going to plant, since they come from the original cabbage, and the original cabbage never disintegrated, so however far you go, Gidulin, you're going to be, it's going to be tummy. So this is what Rabbi Masechta is asking. Abai. Abai said the Mishnah is teaching us that if you plant a cabbage in the ground, it's usher. It's the stays truma. Tells Rabbi Masechta, I don't need the Mishnah to tell me that. We have a whole bunch of Mishnayos that tell us that if you plant something in the ground, it's usher. So Ishtiku, Abai and Rabbi didn't have any answer. Yeah, even though they came from the big yeshiva of Rabbi, and the Rabbi taught a lot about truma, they didn't have an answer. So Amrulay, they told him, Mida, Shamin, Lala. Okay, we don't have an answer. Did you hear an answer to your question? In other words, you're asking us a question. Do you know the answer to your own question? Amrullah, Rabbi Masechta answered them. Hachi Amar Rav Sheshes. I heard the answer to this question from Rav Sheshes. Again, I'm trying to answer why regarding Tuma, it stays. Why regarding Tuma, it doesn't. It's not Tama anymore. But regarding Truma, it stays Trum. So he told him, Maya Surin, that which it says in the Mishnah, the Asur to eat, it doesn't mean that the Asur to eat because it's still Trum. It means Asurin like a harim. It's Asur for a Kain to eat. Why is it Asur for a Kain to eat? If it's Toy, so then why can a Kain eat it? So the answer is, since it became possible by Hesach Hadas. What does Hesach Hadas mean? Hesach Hadas means there's a certain time, person Masechta Das, a person stopped watching over a fruit. And since he stopped watching over the fruit, so Zachshash, this fruit became Tamei again. Let's say our cabbage over here. Our cabbage over here was Tamei 100%. Then he put it inside while he put it inside the ground, he had Hesach Hadas. He doesn't know. He took up end of the fruit. So even though it's a new fruit, a new cabbage after, but the new cabbage he never saw, he was Masechta Das from his Masechta Das from the cabbage. And therefore it's not us to eat because it's still Truma, and it's also deep because even though it's still Truma, but it has Hadas, maybe it became Tamei again. So anyway, the Truma from the first time was planted, the cabbage that you plant in the ground, it changes its name and it's not Tamei anymore. Maybe it became Tamei again. So asking him, all this makes sense. So if you say Hesach Hadas, it's Psul Haguf. Okay, just the introduction. There's different types of Isurim Chachamim made. Some Isurim Chachamim made that they have a reason behind them. And if the reason behind them, once the reason goes away, then the Takana also goes away. If you have fruit, yeah, if you have fruit, and Chachamim said that if you take your eyes off these fruit, then you cannot eat the fruit because maybe they became tummy. Now, what if I know for sure that it didn't become tummy? We're going to see in a second. Now, what if Eliyahu Navi himself comes and tells us that I know this fruit never became tummy, even though you spaced out and you weren't watching this fruit that became tummy. Not, I know it didn't become tummy. So there's two ways of saying. Either I could say, since right now I know for sure it didn't become tummy, so therefore the psul of Hesach Hadas of taking in mind of something, I know for sure it didn't become tummy, so I could eat this fruit. Or I could say, no. And when Abbanan said that anyone who takes the mind of the fruit, it's puzzle, they meant in all cases it's going to be puzzle. It's a new din. It's a new din that anyone who takes the mind of the fruit is puzzle. And they weren't machalek if you know it's tummy, if you don't know it's tummy, you took your mind of the fruit is puzzle. So says the Gemara, if you're going to tell me that Hesach Hadas, that if you take your mind of fruit, the fruit automatically becomes puzzle, even though we know for sure it's going to be, we know for sure maybe it was never tumah, but still, since you took your mind of the fruit, Chamor guys that it's puzzle, sharp it, then it makes sense. It makes sense if you plant a cabbage inside there, if you plant a cabbage inside the ground, that the cabbage that grows from it is not is still going to be puzzle because you took your mind off it. That's tumah. But if you can tell me that's is puzzle because it's going to become tamei, and what if I know for sure it didn't become tamei, then it's going to be kosher. So it doesn't make sense. Michael, how can you tell me that this cabbage is puzzle? How can you tell me this cabbage is puzzle? Because there's no way of this cabbage become puzzle. Because if we say that it's toy, if you say that it was toy, it was tummy, and once you plant in the ground, then it becomes toy. So it's toy. I don't care if you weren't watching it. At the end of the day, it's toy. It's a new mitzvah. So says the Gemara, they eat mad because we learned in the Mishnah because we learned Hesach Hadas, the psul of Hesach Hadas of taking your mind off something. How does it work? So Recha says puzzle psul tumah. it's only possible if it's a chash that became tummy. But if Shimon Lakish has psula guf hava. It's a psula guf, meaning if you take your mind off something, it's tummy, it's possible in every circumstance, even though we know for sure that it's not tummy. What's an afkamina? Vechanam still tum avar. Vechanam says it's possible because it was scared it became tummy, and therefore Shem Yav Eliyav Eliyav is going to come and say that it's time. That even though you won't watch it, but he knows if it was Navur that it's time. Then Shemale will listen to him. Shimon Lakish says psula guf hava. No, that when the way Chacham made the takana, that the way Chacham made the takana, that if you take your mind of something, then in all circumstances, it's going to be us. Even if Shem Yav Eliyav Itarano ain't Shemli, even though Eliyav is going to tell you it's time, it doesn't make a difference. Because the Chacham didn't say that if you took your mind of something, then we'll choshesh maybe became tummy. No, the Chacham said that if you took your mind of something, it is tummy. They made it as if it's tummy anyway, and therefore you can't be matter. So therefore, going back to our question, if you're gonna Rav Sheshe get a pshat in the Mishnah that the reason why this cabbage is usher is because the reason why this cabbage is usher because it's scared it became tummy. So if you say it makes sense, you say that it's psula guf, so that it's fine because you took your mind off this cabbage, and even though there's no chance it became tummy, but you still took your mind off it. But if you can tell me the psula of Hasach taking your mind of something is possible because it's only possible in the case that the chash became tummy. Over here, this cabbage, no chance it became tummy. So Eisvei, Berchan Rishim Mishlakish, Berchan As Rishim Mishlakish, Rabbi Shmuel B'nai Shalberchan Ben Breka Amen. He asked him from a brayso. It says in a brayso like this: Rabbi Shmuel the son of Berchan Ben Breka says, Lul Katan Ben Keves La Mizbeach. It says that on the Mizbeach there was a small hole, a small storage place inside the Mizbeach, built on the Mizbeach. The might of Shal, Keves, on the western wall of the Keves of the ramp. Why would they have a hole over there? Because if you have a carbon that became tummy, right? Or there's a suffix it became tummy. And what would they do? They would take this meat and they would put it in this small cupboard or the small closet on the mizbeach, and they would wait till They would wait till the meat starts going bad, meaning they wait till the next day that it's possible already, and then they would take it and it says it's safe and burn it. Says the word like this: I'm not b'shleima psul tuma hava. If you're going to tell me that the reason why. If you're going to tell me that the reason why, if you have a suffix, let's say, if you were Masechta das on something, we don't know if something is tummy or not. So if you're going to tell me that psul tuma hava mishamachi by ibutzura, shemu yav, if you're going to tell me that the chash of tuma is a chash, the Rabbanan didn't say automatically that if you don't know something is tummy, then it's tummy straight away. Rabbanan said that if you have a suffix, something is tummy, so you have to wait. So it makes sense why I have to wait if I have a carbon that's a suffix, if it became tummy or not, I have to first put it in the storage room, that it should lose its surah, it should become completely possible to be brought as a carbon, and then I can burn it. Why do I have to do that? So if you're going to tell me that the chash of tuma is only a chash, so I understand why I have to first make the carbon unfit to be brought on this beach forever. By what? By leaving it overnight, and then I could burn it. Because it's a chash that maybe Eliyahu is going to come, meaning Mashiach is going to come after I burn the carbon, and Mashiach is going to say, by the way, the carbon you burned yesterday was never tummy. You thought it was tummy, it was never tummy. So that's why we made a special room inside the Mizbeach to put the meat that it should first become unfit. If I have a meat that's a suffix became tummy or not. So do I burn it straight away? No, you can't burn it straight away because everybody else is going to come and say it's time. So you first have to make it unfit midday, so then you can burn it. Early, so that's all. If you're going to tell me that Chachamim Mechatchila the Takana was that they didn't say that something that maybe became tummy, they didn't render it unfit. They said that keep it as a suffix. But if you're going to tell me that it's a psula guf, if you're going to tell me that where Chacham said if you have a suffix tuma, it's as if the thing is tummy it's as if the thing is tummy already. When we pass in the chum, we say the thing became tummy already. So lamali able tura. Why do you have to wait a whole night to burn this meat? Just burn the meat straight away. And that's the question we're going to be asking in this discussion on the suffix of Tumah. Do we say the suffix of Tumah is, if I have something which Chacham said that you cannot eat it because it's a suffix became tummy? Does that mean that either I could say that Chacham said it's a suffix, therefore stay away from it, or Chacham said since it's a suffix, it's already tummy? If you're going to tell me that it's a suffix Tumah, so I can understand why I have to burn it. Why I can't burn it straight away? Because I don't have my comment say it's tight. But if you're going to say that every time there's a suffix Tumah, Chacham said it's tummy anyway, so why do you have to wait to burn it? Why can't you burn it straight away? So we stop over here at the bottom of Lamed Daled Amud Aleph, and we're going to continue tomorrow with Hashem on Lamed Daled Amud Beis. Have a good night.